Yep.
make a great first impression by looking after the front of your home.
Yep, and just get it looking polished. And easiest way to do that is to walk across to the other side of the street and look back at your house. Pretend.
Going once, going twice, sold. You're listening to the Property Pod.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Property Pod, your weekly engagement into real estate here in the Hobart Marketplace. If you had joined us beforehand, you would have been into your weekly update about video games from the 1990s. But we are here talking real estate today. That is the topic of discussion, John and Pat. Unless you want to hit me with your favourite 1990s video game.
I've actually been thinking we should be doing two podcasts. The 10 minutes before we start recording.
Yeah.
And then the actual podcast.
Can I say, so last week we had Drew Evans on the show and I wasn't here for the interview. I set you guys up and then had to run off to a baby scan. But editing the video together, like the 10 minutes before the episode and the 10 minutes after were the best bits. Like it was a really good episode. It was really great, everything that was happening in there. But it's almost like you've got I'm a bit more relaxed. I can actually talk without kind of being in like my Darren Hinch mode of being Andrew Denton.
It makes sense, yeah.
So behind the scenes coming soon.
Yeah, well, it'd probably be better. No, not better. It was still a great episode. Thanks, Drew, for coming on. It was heaps of fun. And we should reach out and get further adventures with Drew Evans from Kaifu Property. But listening to the first time, it's like, man, if only I could edit this stuff into it. Yeah. So,
and I know even from his perspective too, like as a guest, you're trying to be on your best behaviour. I guess you want to get your best stuff out, but ironically, the more you relax, it just flows naturally anyway.
Yeah.
The dude was full of good stuff.
Actually, it would be very funny to go like if I was just to hit the record button without you guys knowing for the 10 minutes beforehand how long it would take you to get cancelled.
Are you saying we're not appropriate?
I'm just saying when the mics are off and, we're talking things from our past or video games or things like that, anything could happen. Anything could come out. So
I'd like to think our listeners are open-minded.
we could have a real Trump moment. Speaking of Trump, actually, just this past week at 414, we had the TCCI...
the personality.
I was really interested where you were going.
No, don't worry. I had a runway. We had the
disc training.
Disc training, yeah. So do you want to kind of give us a rundown of what we did and let the listeners know?
Yeah, so for anyone that don't know what we're talking about, we did training last Thursday and we did disc training, which is like personality training. So most of the team participated and we all had to fill out a questionnaire prior to attending the training. So I think it was 85 questions.
About 80 questions, yeah. You
have to answer them relatively fast. So the idea is not to really think too hard about the questions. Just
it's just kind of, rank these words in the most importance to you to the least important. You kind of flick them in and end up with kind of a personality profile on yourself.
And then, it generates this report and it gives you a personality profile, which is broken down into 4 categories.
Yeah, so the DISC kind of stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, or
Conscientiousness.
Yeah, there you go. What a word. And kind of each of those fit into a personality profile. And in the dominance one, you might be able to guess, but Donald J. Trump was one of the key examples that they used for that.
There you go.
So, look, there are other ones. Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of your heroes, was in that area. Judge Judy, Oprah. Yep. So it's not all bad if you're a D.
No. No, I think the large part of those traits for
Darth Vader as well. I think is if you look up.
I was going to say the other one, the Star Wars version is Vader is there. Yep.
I think C-3PO's compliance from memory.
Yep. Chewbacca for steadiness and Han Solo for influence. So yeah. Actually, are you guys happy to talk about where you sit on the disc profile?
Yeah.
You're a straight up Vader.
No, I was influencer first, so Han Solo followed by Vader.
Not bad.
Because I was the same, but I had it was influence and then conscientiousness.
Yes.
So that veered more so into the what did it say here as a summary? Which is kind of strange. Analytical, reserved, precise, private, systematic. Which, if you know me, that doesn't make any sense at all. But when I think about what makes me feel comfortable, because there's so many other elements to it as well, which one of my sub profiles was that I'm very attuned to the environment around me. So also very attuned to the way that people's emotions, how people feel.
Yeah.
So I see that in the but also in a messy environment that really affects me more than I actually recognise.
I'm glad we counteract each other because my emotional intelligence was down.
Yeah.
When I need guidance morally, John, I'll come talk to you.
We just balance each other well on that front,
And look, it was interesting, going across the board and kind of, if you did like a scatter graph of where everybody sat, there were, areas where we had really high strengths and then weaknesses in other spaces.
Oh, no.
I was just going to say, like, across the board, like, it's good to have people in every category.
So we only had one person, I believe, that fell into the D category, the Donald Trump category, which was Aaron Murray. And he's coming to work this week. You weren't here as when he said this. And he's like, typical D move, Pat. Do you know what I've done? I was like, what have you done, mate? I've changed my ringtone so I wake up to people applauding me. Like, you are an absolute idiot.
You can say you're an absolute D. One of the biggest Ds I've met.
So he said, every morning now I wake up to people cheering for me. It's like, crazy.
It's interesting because, he seemed to kind of be a bit miffed off when he read through his profile thing and didn't seem to be fully on board. But I think by the end of the day, breaking it down a bit more and
I
speaking.
think we all were. Like, I read mine and Patrick needs more help in this. And like, you read it and you're like, oh, shit, I'm failing in everything.
Yeah,
and I think then you discover that there is, like with this, there's no right or wrong.
No.
It's just
different.
understanding how to work with other people once you know what they are.
Yeah, well,
That's the
even
interesting part.
even kind of as my brain was ticking over, I was like, I often think when I'm writing emails, I'm like, man, I sound like such a whiny little bee. Like I'm just
That's
writing.
how I read all of them.
Yeah, no, well,
Yeah.
and what I thought was, what if I could kind of write my email the way I write it, and then pump it through an AI or ChatGPT and write like, please write this in the form of someone who responds in a D.
Yeah, in a direct
Or an
manner.
I or an S or a C, and then it would send it out, and they would get the information I want from the best way that they receive the communication. Because I'm just like, oh, if I didn't write like, I hope you're having a nice day at the start of the email, they're going to think this about me. I'm just like, oh, that's such an I thing to think.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. I had a really, really good day. So thank you to, I forgot her name from the TCCI.
Nat.
Nat, yeah. Thanks to Nat for running the course. It was really, really interesting, and it's given us an idea on communication styles across our office, and it's interesting.
What were your? What did you
I was an S and an I, so
He's keeping that. He's like making us share.
nah, they're good.
Keeping it hidden
That's the
inside.
good bit about being on this side of the desk. So,
We've been on vulnerable and shit. What are you doing?
so we've talked about Trump, but if you want to know some I's and some S's in that space, we've got Robin Williams, there's Jim Carrey, Richard Branson, your Tom Hankses, your Hugh Jackman. So basically,
What are you?
the coolest people, the coolest people under the sun.
Well, one thing that I found it interesting, and we chatted about it a bit as well after, is that it really is a good way of understanding how everyone communicates.
Oh yeah,
Because like the D always gets the dominant side always gets thrown under the bus a bit, but it's direct. It's getting things done element. Like it's can we get to the point, please? And there's often this idea that they don't care. No, it's just want to move through it quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And on the other scale, you could be received that as you're insensitive to me. He's like, no, I really care about you, but I don't have time to think about this. You know?
yeah. And to get us to where we need to be, we need to
need
just
to get
hit
onto
this
it.
button and
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, yeah.
If we were all indecisive and trying to like please everybody the whole time,
wouldn't
nothing
get
would ever get done.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Well, and I recognised it with a client just recently where we're going to be acting as a buyer's agent for him to find a commercial property, and he's just like, mate, can we just get it done? So he's the kind of guy. The word is his bond. So if he says he'll do it or makes a promise, like you never have to worry about
Yep.
it. But it's like, did you want to worry about a large agreement? No, just send me an email, send me the base terms, and I'll say yes, and it's exactly what he did. You know, because it's just he gets it done. But the good thing is you could trust him to the end of the earth, you know, because he's got a good moral centre in that regard.
Yeah, well, as you're saying that, this is a really interesting thing for real estate. Like your job is people. Your job is communicating and working out the best way of kind of getting a message from A to B through people, and you're meeting people across the gamut. So skilling yourselves up in this space is got to be beneficial to be like, I ran into this guy the other day and like, man, like we were just on different wavelengths. Like we just weren't hitting
Yeah.
this. It's like, oh no, he just is a...
No, it's, excuse me. It's definitely something to think about, especially when you're pitching for business.
Yeah.
Like if you're like doing your own natural style, for me being quite to the point, that may not be what someone wants to know. Maybe they want me to listen about all the little ins and outs of the property and, take the time to really find out the backstory. But then you got others that are very analytical and they just want the facts. They want
or like if I'm thinking about preparing marketing materials for certain agents, I can think of the ones where it's like, oh, this will be ready tomorrow. Don't worry, like we can still hit the button. No. All the T's and I's need to be dotted and sorted. It's like, all right, sweet. So next time I'll just remember, don't even offer that as a thing. Just say, it'll be ready tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah,
Be
exactly.
ready tomorrow. We're all good. I don't need to give you the kind of mental strain of being like, oh, goodness, like, what do I do about this? Like, we got this. We'll just be ready tomorrow.
Be ready tomorrow. And if you need my input, tell me exactly what you need me to do.
Yeah.
I need this. Okay, done.
So basically, we're expert
send it to-
communicators now.
and then send it to John in multiple formats so he gets a message.
Yeah, actually, and do it through multiple people at the same time as well.
So yes, that's been us for this last little period. Post that, you head up to Launceston for BMX. It was state titles for a young man.
I went up to Lonnie on Saturday and Parker competed in the state titles, which does every year, but it's always fun to get away for the day and compete.
And the results were pretty positive.
Yeah, he won.
He won.
Best in the state. What can I say?
No, it's really awesome. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, no, he's pretty pumped. He took it pretty easy, so he's he's in a group where he's quite fast, so he wasn't too stressed leading into it this year.
Yeah.
Normally we have a lot of mainlanders that fly down, which makes it a little bit more challenging, but this year nobody from the mainland flew down, so
Okay.
he's pretty relaxed on the day. So
Yeah.
just get in, get it done, and move on.
Yeah, cool.
But no, he loved it. He loves getting away and racing wherever he can.
So that was up in Launceston, and the reason I wanted to bring us there was that I had a segue to lead us into a Launceston topic. So
yes.
thanks for that, Parker, for being the state champ up in Launceston. You've been able to let me talk about Ravenswood.
Time to take a ride to Ravenswood.
So looking this week, Affordable Homes Tasmania has put aside a 100-lot residential subdivision plans for the beautiful suburb of Ravenswood up in Launceston.
Yeah, 12.4 hectares in size.
Yeah.
So quite a big piece of land.
Yeah. So do you guys want to talk kind of to this and what this could mean for kind of social housing and getting a bunch of people into homes here in Tassie?
Well, the Tasmanian government has been making promises to raise the amount of social housing that's being constructed so
Yep.
that there is less strain on the rental market
Yep.
because there is a lot of people looking for homes at the moment. I don't know. I think we've spoken about it in the past. Like they talk about a rental crisis, but it's more an affordability crisis. Like
Yeah.
I think we have 20 homes available in our books currently at the moment. We have very few applications coming through on them. But it's not because people don't need the properties; they just can't afford what the private marketplace is asking.
Yeah.
Where if you talk to someone like Centacare, who we do a lot of work with, and they've got waiting lists with 500,000 people sitting on them. So this is what that's helped.
500,000 people.
500 to 1,000.
Okay. Phew. It's like,
Double the double the population
entire
of the state
state
are
is
wanting
on their
to
waiting
Yeah.
list.
man, that is a list.
But that's what's important about this is it's helping those families get into properties.
Yeah.
So helping ease that pressure, which is really good. So they're saying 100 lots, ranging in size from 500 square metres through to 1,800 square metres. So like always, trying to diversify between houses and unit complexes.
And then I think there's also like 4,421 square metres allocated for like parkland and outdoor areas for people to just have a community. It's not just like plonk, here's a bunch of buildings.
That's it.
And if anyone knows Launceston, they make some of the best parks in the entire state. So who knows? Maybe another cool park will be heading that way.
I got to say, I've been to like 3 newer parks here in Hobart in the last little period, and I've seen that is it not Gormanston Road?
The Beyond the Moon Sports Stadium.
Yeah, that one's getting pumped up. The one out at Goodwood. Like, I know we've covered parks before on this bad boy, and as a father of 2 young growing boys, soon to be another baby on the way, parks are a premium.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So, yeah, shout out to all the park developers out there.
Well, I was curious. I'd made a little note to ask you this, Pat, because the one thing that seemed common against all the arguments across affordability right across Australia is the government realistically just dropped the ball in producing enough housing. When you look back in the 40s and 50s and even like throughout, there was constant developments around government housing.
Yep.
And once they'd sold off so many and then just didn't replace it with building. So unfortunately, a lot of the demonisation got put on the private sector, supposedly picking up the slack. Well, no, it was just really bad planning. But when I know you've been involved with a bunch of them over the last 10, 15 years. But is it that they now change the way in which the makeup is broken up? So there's not just all renting, it's some ownership as well. Like does that change the way they did that, didn't they?
Especially in Southern Tas, they've been doing that. So the biggest issue with social housing and why they started to sell a lot of them off was because they were building, 1,000 homes in one area and making it all social housing.
Yeah, sure.
So then, like, the demographic moving into the area, there were arguments, there were, like, lesser desirable outcomes.
Yep.
And then that devalued the suburb as such. And so then certain suburbs got bad names. And example would be Chigwell would be one of them.
Yep.
So then they started to sell Chigwell off. And there are still some housing in the area, but a lot of it's privately owned now. And slowly that name is becoming more acceptable as a place to live. So I think what they learnt, in my understanding from the sort of 70s and 80s, is that, yes, we need social housing, but we need to mix it in with private housing as well.
Yep.
Because then you keep the overall quality of the suburb up and you're not left with little pockets of rundown suburbs where nobody cares about the homes or where there's issues with sort of police and things like that. So,
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's definitely something that I know they've worked in Southern Tas, and like they've been building social housing right in the centre of Hobart as an example.
Yeah.
So we've got Elizabeth Street, I think, has got a giant complex, and there's right through Hobart now. It's sort of spreading social housing right across all suburbs rather than just putting
just one giant suburb, and that's where they.
Yeah, I think even on the article I was reading based on this Ravenswood thing, it just said something along the lines of another slum, or like slapping another slum here isn't going to fix anything. And it's like, look, you can kind of amass a large amount of people and it could be a bad situation. But if you're splitting everybody up and kind of, what's the one about the ships, raising ships and
the rising tide lifts all ships.
If you've got the area gentrified into a bunch of different people from the community all across the area,
And I think the key is community. So what Bridgewater's been doing really well over the last couple of years is changing that community aspect and really trying to get the people that live there to own the suburb. So
care about it,
like 24 Carat Garden, they're massive out there and giving back. Centrecare's massive. They do things like Youth Week. They do community markets. They have competitions going for best garden. Paint your front door scheme, which seems silly, but if you have a nice painted fresh front door and fresh fence along the front, it just creates a better look to the street.
Yeah.
So there's heaps of community type events happening out there that help bring people together.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Bridgewater, once again, coming back to those damn parks, they've got a great park out there, which is drawing people into the area as well. So
100%.
I think it's important to get people to take ownership of these properties and get them to contribute back where they can, because then that makes the overall experience way better.
Man, I think that if we could just produce as much social housing, I think we're lucky in this as our country and our values, the sense that we see housing a bit more as a right, I guess.
Yeah.
Whether that's an argument or a debate, depending on how you want to look at it, but I think that's sort of the way our country's moved towards. And I think a lot of the resentment comes from the fact that a lot of people just get stuck in a really bad cycle of housing. And the thing is, we've failed that sector when our governments have made promises after all these years, but we've just failed dramatically. So I think, like you mentioned, if a slum's not going to fix the problem, but I just think there's a real sense of difference of the way we're going to we see that moving forward than it used to be. But even like we'd sold the house in Maple Avenue recently, and you look on the old title, every single one of them was Director of Housing. So that whole street, these old 1940s homes were all built by the Director of Housing back in the day.
Yeah.
And they're all known to be really good, solid, classic homes, So I think those kind of initiatives are really exciting.
Yeah, no, look, it's really cool, and it's kind of, that idea of 100 new homes in an area that can be put people in homes that don't have homes or are struggling.
Yeah.
Never a bad thing.
Definitely.
Before we go any further, Pat, I gave you some homework 2 weeks ago, I believe.
Yeah, and I totally got on that.
I know, you said. I got this, man. I got this. So if you were listening 2 weeks back.
Shit, I knew this would come back to bite me one day.
So John did his research maybe 5 minutes before and gave us heaps of info on top 3 tips for sellers in spring. And I flipped the lid on you and I said...
Was he sellers or buyers? I thought John was looking after buyers.
I was buyers, yeah.
Come on, Aaron. What are you doing?
What am I doing? I'm throwing. All right, I know when I'm wrong as a S or an I or whatever.
I was
I am.
supposed to be giving 3 top tips to sellers.
All right, so you have done some research.
No,
Cool.
But, come on, we can talk about this.
All
This
right,
is
well,
easy.
off the top of the dome, hit me with your 3 top tips for sellers. I'm confused now. What are you? Sellers.
Selling in spring.
Oh, yeah, I do remember now. Yeah, John's the buyer's advocate. You're the
So we've
seller's
already
man.
talked about it multiple times, but its presentation from the street is the number one.
Number one thing.
And I don't think anyone could argue with that. It's got to look good from the street frontage.
Yep.
And that's, your fresh cut lawns, your washed windows, your fence. If your picket fence has got a few palings missing, fixing those little things.
Yep.
And most importantly, a nice, tidy letterbox.
Letterbox is important.
I think it is.
In this modern day and age where
No,
letters aren't really that common and,
I've just sold some houses lately and you got a rusty letterbox and someone's walking up the front pathway. It's not a good look.
So the idea is that first impression of being like, if they can't even look after the letterbox,
What else
how
is
are they
wrong
going to
with
look
the
after the home?
You want to feel safe walking up and knocking on the front door.
Yeah.
And a well-presented front does that.
Okay.
Yeah, so to me, that's the best thing you can do.
All right, so first impressions matter is kind of the first bit of it.
Yep.
Make a great first impression by looking after the front of your home.
Yep, and just get it looking polished. And easiest way to do that is to walk across to the other side of the street and look back at your house. Pretend you're the buyer looking at it, because most times buyers will drive past before they ring us.
Yep.
Because we put so much info online, they have everything to be able to go and have a look at it. So Abby and I were a prime example on the weekend. We're not in the market to buy at the moment, but Grace in our office was buying a place and we happened to be in the suburb that she was looking at. So we went for a little sticky, had a look down the driveway to see what the place looks like.
Yep.
And
The first impression matters.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, this looks quite nice. I can see why this was attracted to Grace.
Yep.
So that's probably the most important thing, is to put yourself in the buyer's shoes and see what it looks like to them.
I like it.
Second one,
Hit me with number 2.
marketing.
Ha
My favourite topic.
Yeah. Tell me more.
You got to get a good photographer to start with.
Yeah.
But the photographer and the agent need to work together, because at the end of the day, the agent knows what the best features are.
Yep.
And the agent knows what should be focused on, but they need the photographer to capture that correctly.
Yep.
So I was actually reading an article on you last night. I shared it with you.
You did, yeah.
5 tips for photographers. And I was looking through them, and one that I didn't really think of that they had in this list was actually featuring like some of the appliances and making a point of inclusions that stay with the property.
Yeah.
So if you've got a high-end fridge that stays with the property, making sure that's present in the photos and like making a point that that's part of the sale. And they talked about photos of the community. Like I know some agents in Hobart do it where they'll have like 5-minute walk to the local park, 5-minute walk to this shopping centre. Like just bringing in that community into the marketing so people can start to imagine.
Get an idea of what it would be like and how far is it from. I guess with lots of the drone photos, I try and if there's a major centre, and it's that tricky one of like, do you put like the arrow pointing down saying Northcote?
Yeah. So to me, you can have photos, but they have just any photo may not be the right photo. You've got to sell the story. Like I was at a property yesterday and there's no dining table in the living area, but there's a big giant hole where one should sit.
Yep.
And we were talking to them like, you've got beautiful furniture everywhere else, but you've got this big void with nothing. We'd be suggesting we put in a digital dining table there. So
which we might have talked about last time, but there was a one with a giant dining table taking up this huge space. It was like, if this was shrunk down and you put a couch there and a smaller table, it would make the area look larger, more appealing, and kind of you've got 2 living areas this way.
Absolutely.
And the beauty of digital furniture mixed in with real furniture is it blends quite nicely. It actually almost blends better than when you've just got an empty room full of digital furniture.
Yeah, no, it can.
So they're the key things I think when you think about marketing is like everyone can say, we'll get a professional photographer in. But I think when you're talking to an agent, make sure they understand the message that they've got to pass on to that photographer.
100%,
Because some agents will just say, ring up the photographer and say, go photograph this property. But I think you need to be able to make sure that your agent understands what's important to you in those photos so they can pass that on to the marketing team.
Well, I guess an example with that is recently Marilyn had the one that I was talking about where the owner had spray painted the grass in an area to green to make it more appealing, and they had a fire pit down in the bottom corner. And talking to the owner and Marilyn at the same time, she'd mentioned, oh no, we're taking that with us like that. It was, one of those ones with like the rocks and like it was beautiful. It was like a birthday present for the partner. So I did get a photo of it. I edited it. And then I said to Marilyn, I don't think we should include this one based on the conversation that was had with the owner prior to. Happy to put it in. I think the discussion was Marilyn had said we could put in fire into the fireplace digitally.
Yep.
And she said, oh, did you do that? And I said, oh, I thought after our discussion, maybe not including it. Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. I didn't think of that. Yes, we probably don't need to focus on that in this because it's not part of the property.
So, yeah, that to me is the next big step, I guess, if you're thinking about selling at the moment, is that you want to make sure that the 20, 25 photos or 10 photos that they put up are the right photos that sell the story the best.
Yeah.
Because I don't think a huge amount of people read text anymore. And I know for a fact because I'll put in information in the text and then people will email me and say, how big is the block? I'm like, it's written in the text.
Yeah.
But they might not be a D person or an S person, Pat. They might be an I or a C or a... So you got to remember all this, mate.
Well, this is why it's important to make sure you capture it in the photos so that you don't have to worry about covering all bases. So to me, that's important.
Yep.
And my third tip is to make sure you work with an agent that you feel comfortable with. I think any agent can sell a house in a market, or especially in a booming market. We're probably not quite in a booming market at the moment, so it's probably important to make sure you, I guess, gel with the agent you choose to move forward with.
Yeah.
You've got to have an open relationship with them. You've got to be comfortable with them telling you what you don't want to hear. And you'll pick that up just by interviewing a couple. You'll know which ones you feel more comfortable chatting around.
Well, here we go.
Back to that DS,
full circle.
that
If you go to all the personality stuff,
Yeah.
you might think that the friendliest and nicest agent and the person that you get along with like your friend is the best person to sell your house. But that might not be the case. It might be the opposite. It might be this hard-edged guy who's just going to tell you like, boom, 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 this is what you need to know.
Well, we spoke about that in the training. Like, there's no point going to somebody in the office that you know is the same style disc profile as you because they're just going to agree with you.
Yeah.
You got to go find that polar opposite to be able to, get a different story.
Yes.
And the more I thought about it is I did it unwillingly knowing that that's what I was doing because quite often I'll come up with an idea and I'll go and ask John and he'll have
A completely different point of view, yeah.
And sometimes I don't like those thoughts. I'm like, you're full of shit, John. But
Which is probably 80% of the time.
But in reflection now, I realise how important that is because it's just looking at it through a different set of eyes and it identifies issues that I didn't think of.
There's that feedback loop thing where you can get trapped in if you're only looking up information in the same spot.
Yeah.
And it's the way that you can see all these fake news kind of conspiracy theorists. They're like, if we just stay in our little bubble of this is the way the world is, you're going to keep getting the same feedback.
Yeah, so anyone that wants an appraisal done by me, I'm happy to provide you my disc profile prior to arriving so that you can see if we're a good fit.
I thought of this. I was like, if you were kind of trying to work on a, could you provide the test to somebody and say, look, I might not be the right agent for you, but this guy might be. And it might be like a battle between you and John to be like, look, we both could sell your house, but you're probably going to have a better experience with.
According to the raw data of our reports, you're better suited to John over me. It would be an interesting approach, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's something to think about.
But yeah, to me, that's very important is to know who's going to best work for you in your scenario.
When Dad is part of when he did the training, he will often say, everyone says they want an honest agent until they get one.
That's 100% true though, if you think about it, because like the amount of times I'll win business and then when I have to go have the hard conversation with them, they basically will accuse me of lying or say that I misled them. And I'm like, no, that's not how this, and so I've learned to keep quite detailed notes so that at a later stage, when someone says, you said this, I'm like, no, I agreed with what you said and said we would try that.
Yeah.
But then that gets spin into, I said that would work.
Yeah.
So and I'm assuming you're the same, you take quite detailed notes now so that later down the track.
Well, luckily we've got really nice clients for a property selling Glenorchy. And with the appraisal price, we'd said, look, I think it was $550 to $575, and we said, well, look, based on what you want to try, happy to have a crack at the higher end, and we're going to steer away from a buy. We're just going to do a fixed price, so the market knows where you're at. Fully understanding that, look, this is our advice. Are you comfortable? This is the strategy. We're going to be talking about this in 21 days if nothing happens, and we've kept all the the statistics, all the numbers, and then on that when we had the break, they knew what was coming, and on the email, just really like the conversation then followed up in writing is to say here's the range of our original advice that we all agreed to, and now we're going to here's the 3 steps scenarios, and now we're in scenario number 3. So now the new advice is to adjust, and like, yep, got it, happy, done. And there's that constant communication through multiple ways that they could get the message, so that not everyone's going to be receptive in that way, but there was never an argument between all of us. We're pointing towards a process.
Yeah, it's definitely important to document that process, I guess, because too many times I learned early in my career is that exact scenario, but I didn't have the evidence to back it up. And then when I go to have that conversation, they're like, but you agreed that we would get 800,000 for it. I'm like, actually, I didn't. My price was this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's...
And it's frustrating too, because obviously we... you never want to have to sit there and be in a defensive situation, but we all get defensive if we feel like we're being attacked and being wrong. And ultimately, and that's where a relationship can quickly sour. So it's trying to find a way of getting, how do we get through each other's brain to, hear the message we need to, because often we'll all get defensive in those situations, And as agents, I guess we try and take some responsibility of helping our clients see a path forward.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, they're my 3 tips.
Boom.
3.
How many fingers?
3 tips.
3 tips from Pat.
Boom.
I can't even do it with that because mine's so jointed.
Who would have thought we all got weird fingers? What are the key takeaways from today?
Yeah.
Well, they've all done some weird things in their Star Wars characters, and houses with Ravenswood will sell, and we've got weird fingers.
You hear the hot takes here.
Thanks for joining us on the Property Pod. If you didn't listen to last week's episode with Drew, jump back and have a listen to that. The week before that was John Sellers buyers tips. Well, I've got that backwards in my head every time.
No idea.
Anyway, that's what they were. We've got plenty of fun episodes coming up in the next few weeks. Stick with us for the Property Pod. Like, share, subscribe, do all those things.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
See ya.
You have been listening to the Property Pod, recorded and edited by 414 Media House in conjunction with 414 Property Code.
This podcast is general information only, and the thoughts and views expressed is the opinion of our panel, and listeners should always seek then use their own investigation into any topic we discuss to ensure they fully understand their own situation.
It does not constitute and should not be relied on as purchasing, selling, financial or investment advice or recommendations, express or implied, and it should not be used as an invitation to take up any agent or investment services. No investment decision or activity should be undertaken on the basis of this information without first seeking qualified and professional advice.